Hi friends, we're going to be reading a nonfiction book. It means it's going to have true facts and information. You're going to notice that there's real pictures about different memorials and historic buildings here in the United States. Notice up here on the left-hand corner, it says history because this is part of our history. This picture has some of those memorials and historic buildings, and they are located in Washington, D.C., which is our nation's capital. I've actually been there and been to many of these. So as we read, I'll tell you a little bit more about them from what I know. This is written by Margaret McNamara. Pictures to think about. Oh, that looks like George Washington to me. George Washington was our first president. We're going to learn about this very famous statue carving. Our second picture here is of a very famous building, and we consider that a memorial as well. And that one's in Washington, D.C. We'll learn about that one. I've been there. And this bottom one, we should all know what this picture is. This is our nation's capital. It is the Capitol building at Washington, D.C. All right, let's go ahead and look at this next picture. And this picture here has our title, Memorials and Historic Buildings by Margaret McNamara. Here's some more pictures over here. Some of these are in Washington and some of them are not. This is a famous arch. This is where the Declaration of Independence was signed in Philadelphia. I've been there as well. Very famous memorial here and a very famous building here. We'll learn all about them. Table of contents. Words to think about. That's going to be on page 2. The introduction. Introduction, remember that means they're telling us a little bit about it before we start. What is this going to be about? And that's on page 4. Chapter 1 is memorials to presidents. Oh, okay, so we have some memorials that are made because of our presidents, and it's made for them. On page 6, Chapter 2 is memorials to brave citizens, and we know what a citizen is. We learned that in Unit 1. Those are people that have done great things, right? We're all citizens. These are for brave citizens, so they must be very special people, like we've learned about Dr. King. That's on page 10. Chapter 3, historic buildings. That's on page 12. And then we have a conclusion. That's when they tell us the main idea again in a little bit of a different way. And there is a glossary and index. And that's on page 16. That's how I know it's definitely nonfiction. All right, let's begin our story. Words to think about. So these are some words that we're going to be reading about. Our first word is citizens. It says some buildings and statues honor great citizens. Here's a statue here with some citizens on it. Here's our second word, Congress. Congress has senators and representatives from each state. Congress helps pass laws in our country. Historic. What does it mean if something is historic? The Betsy Ross House is a historic building. Historic means that it has something to do with history. So if it's a historic building, that means it's a building that is part of our history. All right, here's the word memorial. This memorial honors Benjamin Franklin. So this is a memorial, something to help us remember him. Here's the word Minutemen. Minutemen were soldiers in the American Revolution. The American Revolution was a war that was fought to help separate us from England long ago. We were actually part of England. But the people here decided that they did not want to be owned by England anymore and told what to do by the King of England. So we fought a revolution. And some of these men that helped fight that revolution were called Minutemen. Here's President. Abraham Lincoln was an American president. He was our 16th president, a very important man. All right, let's start our story. Introduction. A memorial helps us remember the past. A memorial is a building or a structure that honors important people and events. All right, so let's find out what this one was. I remember that picture from the beginning. It says the Gateway Arch in St. Louis, Missouri is a memorial to pioneers who traveled west. Wow, pioneers are usually the first people to get there. A historic building is notable and important. A historic building helps us learn about our country's past. Oh, I've been here. Independence Hall is in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. The Declaration of Independence was signed here about 250 years ago. And here is a painting of those brave men that signed the Declaration of Independence. Very important men. Chapter 1. Memorials to Presidents. Mount Rushmore is a memorial to honor 4 presidents or leaders of the United States. Well, let's count them. 1, 2, 3, 4. Workers carved the faces of the presidents into the side of the mountain. Each face is about 18 meters or the same as 60 feet long. Wow, that looks like it was a dangerous job. These men must be very important. So our first picture is of George Washington. George Washington was a general that helped us win the American Revolution, and so he became our first president. People wanted him to be our president because he was such a strong leader. Number 2, that second picture, is of Thomas Jefferson. He was our next president. He was also there and signed the Declaration of Independence and helped us win our independence in the Revolutionary War. A very important man. Number 3, Theodore Roosevelt. Theodore Roosevelt helped us later on in our history through some very difficult times. Very important man, and also helped create our nation's national parks. Number 4, that's our 16th president, Abraham Lincoln. Of course, he helped us get through the Civil War and helped freed the African slaves. Mount Rushmore is in South Dakota. I haven't been there, but my son has. He's so lucky. Chapter 1 still. These presidents also have memorials in Washington, D.C. George Washington was the first president. Thomas Jefferson wrote the Declaration of Independence. All right, so this is the Washington Monument. It's in Washington, D.C., and here's the Jefferson Memorial. I've been to both of those. Very important places. Abraham Lincoln freed many enslaved people and kept the country united. Theodore Roosevelt helped to preserve our nation's parks and forests. So here's a picture here that shows a park memorial. Theodore Roosevelt has a memorial island in Washington, D.C. He has a whole island dedicated to him. You can see this is a very large building because you can see the people in the background, and right in there is this picture, or this statue, excuse me, of Abraham Lincoln. It's called the Lincoln Memorial, and it holds a large statue of Abraham Lincoln. Very large building, and this is where Dr. Martin Luther King gave his most famous speech that we learned about, I Have a Dream. Chapter 2, Memorials to Brave Citizens. The Minutemen fought during the American Revolutionary War. These citizens were ready to fight the British in a minute. A statue honors these soldiers. So here is our caption. The Minutemen statue is in Lexington, Massachusetts. A lot of men came from Massachusetts to help fight this war. There were some important things during the American Revolution that happened in Massachusetts. More than 150 years ago, brave men fought and died at the Alamo. The men fought for independence or freedom of Texas. A statue honors these men. There's a statue of these brave men and women, and this is the Alamo. The Alamo Monument and the Alamo Mission are in San Antonio, Texas. So there are other places as well. All right, let's go and turn the page. Chapter 3, Historic Buildings. The United States Capitol is a historic building in Washington, D.C. The members of Congress work here. They make the laws or rules for our country. This is a little insert of what it looks like inside. Congress has senators and representatives from each state. They work in the Capitol building. The White House is the home of the President of the United States. The President also works here. Both of these buildings are more than 200 years old. And here's our caption. The address of the White House is 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue in Washington, D.C. Here's another very famous statue of an important Native American, statue of Sacagawea. A statue of Sacagawea, the Native American guide and interpreter, stands in the Capitol building. She was a very famous woman who helped some men map out some parts of the United States. Conclusion. Memorials honor special people from the past. Some memorials honor presidents. Other memorials honor brave citizens. Historic buildings are old, important buildings. These buildings help us learn about our country's past. Very important to learn about our past. Here are some memorials to presidents. Remember the Washington Memorial, or Washington Monument, and the Lincoln Memorial. Those are all in Washington, D.C. Sacagawea statue. These are memorials to brave citizens and historic buildings like the U.S. Capitol and the White House. All right, here's our glossary. Do you remember what a glossary is? Remember that glossaries are like dictionaries, but for this book only. And it has words in it like citizens, Congress, historic, memorial, Minutemen, and president. That helps us understand this story. So citizens are people who live and work in and contribute to a country. We are all citizens. Congress, the senators and representatives who make laws for our country. You can go to page 12 to see that. Historic, having great and lasting importance. If I want to see where that's used in the book, I go to page 5. Memorial, a building or structure honoring a person or event. See page 4. Minutemen, citizens who fought in the American Revolution. See page 10. President, leader of a country. See page 6. All right, now here's our index. We've talked about indexes, and we know that indexes are mainly in informational text, right? Our nonfiction. And if I want to learn where the word building is used, I would go to these pages. First, I would go to page 4 and 5. Then I would go to 12 and 13. And then finally, page 15. So if I wanted to learn more about Minutemen, I would go to page 10 and 11. Instead of me having to read the whole book, I can go back here and find where those subjects are. All right. The end. There's a nice night scene above the Lincoln Memorial. I went to all of these places when I was younger. I was very privileged that my mom could take me, and I went to lots of places across our country. So if you get the chance, it's important for us to travel and learn about our past so that we can have a better future. We can think about those things that are important and how we can make this country a great country. All right, friends, hope you enjoyed the book. Bye.